Some wife-beating allegations are disputed.
I have not hit that woman.
Some are not.
He was running towards me with an axe in his hand.
911 emergency calls now.
I need the San Diego Police Department, please. My fiance just hit me again.
The Americans are getting tough on domestic violence and tough on the causes of domestic violence. Tonight on World in Action, could we do the same here?
I just had enough of her keep repeatedly wanting me to marry her. And I said, look, that's it, I've had enough, and I left. I walked up the pathway to the hotel, asked the porter to get me a flight home, and I started packing my suitcase. She followed me and was furious. She went absolutely berserk. She said, if you're leaving me on this, I'm going to commit suicide. She went out on the ledge, she was going to jump. At that point, nobody's ever done that to me, so I sat on the bed not knowing what to do. And then she came in, and in a fit of temper, and again, angry, started throwing my things out of the window. So I went to stop her, to restrain her. And in trying to restrain her, grabbing hold of her hands to restrain her, we both fell on the floor, which was a hard floor, a tiled marble floor. There were no carpets. And she hit her head on the floor. And that is what happened.
In January, Jeff Boycott was convicted in a French court of beating up this woman. He was given a suspended jail sentence and a heavy fine. Boycott's now pushing for a retrial, but his ex-lover has no time for his denial.
He grabbed hold of me. He had hold of me like that. He had his legs on top of me, and he was punching, 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 punching. And I was screaming and screaming and screaming.
These photos were taken 2 days after the attack. At first, Margaret didn't want to press charges until the French police explained that they, and not the victim, would prosecute.
Well, in a way, it was a relief because it took the decision away from me. I had to go back and see them, and I spent 2 hours with the head of police in Cannes and was interviewed very thoroughly. I knew that I would have to go to court, and of course I was nervous about the court case, but he's guilty, and I was very pleased when it was all over.
Jeff Boycott is the latest in a growing number of celebrities accused of battering their partners. The case highlighted the problem of how to prosecute wife-beating, which costs Britain's public services an estimated £1 billion. Next month, the government will announce its plans for reducing attacks in the home. Tonight, we show how Britain could beat domestic violence.
The male is a white male, 35, 5'8", 160, wearing blue jeans, t-shirt. His dogs were all unknown why. RP stating that the male is trying to take a 3-year-old child from the female.
It's one of the most routine police call-outs in the world, a domestic incident. A husband and wife reported fighting.
Police department, anybody inside?
The question of how to handle wife-beating allegations is common to police forces in Britain and here in the Californian city of San Diego.
My wife and I had somewhat agreed that one of us was going to leave or move out or make arrangements or something, because we've been having too many disagreements when baby's concerned.
The man had threatened his wife and is taken away. Officers stay around to see if the woman is visibly hurt. If so, they'll take statements and photographs.
This is a domestic violence incident which will be documented with a report. The city attorney will get a copy of it, as well as our domestic violence detectives, and then they'll try to take care of the problem now before somebody gets hurt.
At the Domestic Violence Unit, Detective Linda Oberles follows up victims' complaints. Trina, here in blue, is her latest case.
What my job is now is
Trina has moved from Pennsylvania to California with her boyfriend. He's been arrested for beating her up.
he just like that, and his head hit this side hit the back of the headboard. I had a massive headache going from here to here, and I was laying in the middle of the bed, and then he sat his knees on me and said, "Now," he goes, "I told you, you do what I say, and next time I tell you to get in bed, you do it." I said, "Whatever." So I ain't arguing with you, Brian. You're totally out of control. I ain't talking to you.
Did you tell him you were going to call the police?
I said, I got the shits of it, I'm calling the police. And he says, you're not leaving this room.
How long did that last?
Another 10 minutes.
He held you in the room for 10 minutes after you told him you were going to call the police?
That's when he bloodied my lip with a full fist.
Tell me how that happened. Talk to me
I don't even know. It happened so fast. Like I said to the police officer, I don't even know which incident came first.
The discovery that you're living with a violent person can come as a shock to women wherever they live.
I knew he was like it with people outside, but he'd never shown any signs to me at home. And it was not until 2 years into the relationship he was actually put away for something, and then when he came out he became very jealous of me, and we had an incident one evening where he actually just slapped me. But I hadn't never been through anything like that before. I hadn't come from an abusive childhood, so I found that quite horrendous and actually threw him out. But of course then it was flowers and forgiveness and crying, and I took him back in.
We knew each other for about 2 years before we got married, and he only lived round the corner. I suppose the first few months were quite nice, pleasant enough, but I got pregnant quite soon after, and I don't know if it was the pregnancy or that he just couldn't cope with being married, that about 6 months into the pregnancy was the first time he sort of really got violent.
The police used to say to me, did I want to press charges? And by this time I was being worn down mentally as well as physically. I'd started to smoke, I'd lost 2 or 3 stone in weight. And I just feared him too much to do anything to take him to court.
They did ask if you would like to press charges or have him sent to court or whatever, but at the time I was quite frightened to do that because I thought there'd be a lot of repercussions.
He used to threaten me and say that if I ever took him to court, that he would serve his time and then come out and injure me. He knew where my family lived. It was just fear.
The victim's fear is a major source of police frustration. It's estimated that in Britain, just 10% of domestic incidents are ever reported to the police. Yet the home can be a place of injury, danger, and sometimes death. Every 3 days a woman dies of domestic violence in Britain. In San Diego, they're trying something different. Though Trina is cooperating now, by the time the case comes to court, she may change her mind. So police collect other evidence in order that they can prosecute without her.
We don't necessarily leave it up to the victims to drop charges, and I hear that all the time. People from other states say, they call me and they say, I'm going to drop charges. Well, we don't do that. We look at the whole big picture. We look at pictures, we look at 911 tapes, we look at prior incidents of domestic violence, which you have, and we send what we have over to the city attorney of San Diego, and they decide whether or not to file charges. Okay?
Yeah,
and in your case, it sounds like you still care about Brian, right?
Yes.
You're not doing this to be vindictive. You just want the abuse to stop, don't you? Okay, that's how close I'm going to be, okay? About there.
The detective takes extensive photographs of Trina's injuries. These will form an essential part of the victimless prosecution.
It's that old saying that pictures are better than words, and a lot of times what will happen is our victims, by the time it gets to court, they've reunited with the person who hurt them, and we use that to show juries that yes, this person really did have bruises and lacerations and a lot of visible injuries as a result of this man or woman or suspect's behavior.
San Diego prosecutes domestic violence aggressively. On the walls of the domestic violence unit, there's a grisly gallery of some of the 14,000 victims they deal with every year.
Photographs are the most accurate evidence of what this defendant really did to this victim, and that makes it perfectly reliable evidence that can be used in a court.
Files at the city attorney's office indicate the volume of domestic violence cases prosecuted every year. Casey Gwynn championed the victimless prosecution policy and its popularity helped his election to office.
If someone robs a bank, do we say to the teller in the bank, "Do you want to press charges?" Never. We would never ask that question, because bank robbery is such a serious crime that we're going to hold someone accountable if they rob a bank, whether the teller wants to press charges or not. And if we do it for bank robbery, then that's what we should be doing for other serious crimes like domestic violence.
Once it was up to the authorities to press charges instead of the victim, the number of reported domestic incidents in San Diego rose by 60%. Women were no longer afraid to call the police.
What's your emergency there, ma'am?
My husband is after me. Handicapped.
Your husband is after you? What do you mean by after you? Is he trying to harm you or hurt you?
Yes.
Okay, what's your name, ma'am?
One of the daily reports of domestic violence to the San Diego police. The operator sends 2 police cars while the caller is still on the line.
Okay, is that him in the background? Okay, does he have any weapons? Okay. Betty, what's his name?
Each emergency call, known as a 911 call in America, is systematically recorded. The recordings, together with the Polaroid photographs, can be powerful evidence in a victimless prosecution. Trina's call to the police will be an important part of Detective Oberle's case. She's also checked out the background of Trina's boyfriend and found he has previous convictions for domestic violence. This record, too, can be used by the prosecution in court, with some judicial reservations.
Judges need to be careful that, though the law tells us that we have discretion to allow some of this evidence in, we need to do so in a very judicious way so that we still are preserving the defendant's right to a fair trial and not unduly influencing the result.
The vast majority of women in domestic violence cases that call 911 call in crisis. They're terrified. They're afraid for their lives. They're afraid for the lives of their children. They're fearful for their safety, and they call 911. They don't deliberate. They don't think to themselves, gee, I think I'll call and be hysterical and upset, and then maybe the police will come and I'll get my husband in trouble. We listen to 400 911 tapes a month in our domestic violence unit. And when you hear crying, hysterical women and children on 911, you can determine pretty quickly whether or not they're telling the truth.
Sometimes calls can make uncomfortable listening for the police. The following call by a woman led to the arrest of her partner, a law enforcement officer.
911 emergency. What's the emergency there?
It's some domestic abuse.
What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Nancy. Brittany, stop straight. Okay,
hello?
Get here. Please get here.
Ma'am, don't hang the phone up.
I want to press.
I understand that. Listen to me.
Taking my children out.
Nancy, listen to me. The police are on the way, but you don't hang that phone up, all right? Is he white, black, Hispanic, Oriental?
He's white. He's law enforcement. He probably has.
Wait a minute. What do you mean law enforcement? What is he?
Border Patrol. He's got a restraining order against him. He was just inside my house, and he hit me when he was in.
I heard that, yes.
Did you hear him slap me?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Please hurry. Okay. My kids are freaking out.
I understand. Just stay on the line.
Thank you. He's taking them outside the house.
In Britain, many battered women have resorted to refuges as a way out of the violence and safe accommodation while they're rehoused. Security is a priority. We cannot say where this refuge is located. Some women have been tracked down to these safe houses and murdered. The refuges are maintained by grants and housing benefit, but we found an overstretched and underfunded system. As far back as 1975, a parliamentary committee recommended there should be over 900 refuges. Today, there are fewer than 340, and now some refuges are threatened with closure because of cuts in housing benefit. This refuge has already made 3 staff redundant.
The whole organisation is at crisis point. We hope that we won't be turning women away, at least in the short term, but in the longer term, if our funding crisis is not resolved, then we will be forced to close. So those women will then be forced into bed and breakfast, which is not a real alternative and is also much more expensive.
For Dorothy and Sandra, the only way out of the violence was to abandon the family home and seek refuge.
It went on for 16 years, and I think you get to a stage when, apart from yourself, your children need a different life. They don't want to suffer all that every other week of their life. And you just have to take it in your stride and go. It's the only way out, really, because the violence gets worse. It doesn't stop.
He'd found out where I was and actually came and got me in the car and took me back to the house where I was kept. He actually physically sat across the door so I couldn't get out. And in the end I said to him that if he doesn't let me go, that the police will come because my daughter is in the refuge and they will wonder where I am. And I'd started to get myself ready to go, and I just heard a movement, and as I looked up he was running towards me with an axe in his hand, and before I knew it he was there with the axe coming down to my head, and I just managed to shoot my hand up quick, and I felt the axe go in my hand, come out, go in again, come out, and there was just blood everywhere, and I just completely went, and I can still feel the feeling today, into shock. And he was just running round screaming and crying for his mum and saying that he would now go to prison, and he just ran out of the house and left me.
Sandra eventually pressed charges against her partner. He's now serving a 5-year prison sentence.
You were charged on Saturday the 14th of February 1998 at Accrington. You assaulted. That's contrary to Section 39 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988. Is there any reply by...
Valentine's night in Accrington, an unlikely setting for some San Diego-style policing. Police have arrested this man for threatening his wife with a knife, and their evidence will include not only the knife, but Polaroid photographs of the wife's injuries. Police have brought in cameras for a trial period to see if photographic evidence gives victims of domestic violence greater confidence in pressing charges. If it works, it could become police procedure, but the evidence won't replace the victim's testimony.
It gives them a lot more support, and they then prefer to, or accept that they will have to go to court and give evidence, but with the corroboration of the photographs. The way the courts work over here is that we still need the victim as our primary source of evidence when it goes to court, unlike the American ideal where they have what they call victimless prosecutions. We still need the victim to give evidence in court.
Sean Hodges, please.
In San Diego, they're not just gathering evidence differently. They're tackling the cause of domestic violence too. Courts like these specialize in domestic trials. They also monitor punishment. Convicted wife-beaters must attend a year's counseling at their own expense. If not, they go to jail.
Please share with us at this time 2 things that you thought were the most important things you learned at the course.
One thing would be how to recognize situations that are becoming difficult as they happen, and another would be just some like relaxation techniques and those sort of things.
Do you feel that it is a habit that now you need to continue to practice on changing, or do you think you actually have changed that habit at this point after a year of participation?
Well, I think it's something that you have to work on for your whole life. So.
Offenders who complete the counseling are invited to hang their certificates on the court wall. It's a mark of the value the courts place on this form of punishment.
All right, good luck to you, sir. Thank you. The defendants who completed the 1-year counseling program, their rate of repeat offense was reduced by 50 to 60% over those who did not engage in counseling. And I think that's a fairly impressive reduction in the rate of violence. So it allowed us to become committed to assisting these defendants in getting through the course.
Not everyone we met in court, however, was convinced that the city's aggressive policy towards domestic violence acts as a deterrent. Andrew Verne has defended many offenders.
The only thing that deters is whether somebody's going to actually call the police in any given situation. I think they're very fearful of one. It's like, my God, if I call the police, what's going to happen? I'm going to end up having to hire an attorney. We're going to end up incurring all sorts of expenses as a couple. You know, incurring expenses for that, incurring expenses for domestic violence treatment programs. So I think, yeah, it's a deterrent, I think, for some people not to call the police and not to get anybody involved.
Our calls have not gone down. We have not seen a reduction simply because we have an aggressive mandatory arrest policy and an aggressive prosecution policy. Women are still calling for help.
Liverpool, where some American methods have been brought over the Atlantic by the probation service. On Wednesday nights, these men attend compulsory counselling. They've all been convicted of domestic violence, and the counselling goes to the heart of their problem, their attitude towards women.
So you have the right to stop bleeding. Other people have no right to interfere. It's okay to be violent to get your own way. Can you widen that out a bit, Paul, and look at your beliefs and attitudes to women at that time? And you've all been there, so make a few suggestions. They might be wrong, but we can look at them.
Well, I thought I wanted her to stop her dead.
To hurt her? Yeah, to hurt her. But what did he believe?
I believe women have a place and they should stay.
Did you, Paul?
I don't know.
Did you then?
Maybe that, yeah, on that day.
Women should.
We asked men who'd been convicted of violence what they were getting out of sessions like these. Some prefer to conceal their identities.
You need to be challenged, you need to be told what you've done. Most of the people on the group don't know what they've done. They don't know why they're on here. But by the end of the group, they know exactly what they've done, why they're on here, why they've done it.
Why I'd done it in the houses where I thought I could get away with it. It was in closed doors. I thought, she's not going to grass me, she's my girlfriend, she's not going to shop me, she's not going to get me lifted, she's all they kind of things. As I say, because I was behind closed doors, nobody else could see it.
I wasn't getting no satisfaction with my fists. I believe my partner had become immune to me being physically with my fists, and this is the way I needed to use a weapon now to control the situation, to get back on top.
I would probably still arguing, probably still call her names if she was probably doing it to me, yeah. And I definitely know I wouldn't have left my hands.
Research on 2 of these counselling schemes in Scotland showed they reduced repeat offences, but insecure funds threaten their future. Liverpool's probation service faces budget cuts this year, and one of the 2 Scottish schemes has already had to close. For some, however, the value of such intervention is priceless.
I don't believe in men hitting women, although I committed the offence and I've done it for years. I've never been happy with the situation. But I don't believe there's enough done for people to be able to hold their hands up and find help and say, I'm an abuser, please help me. The only way you get on and get any help on this cause is actually to be convicted.
If we're going to say that violence between strangers or intimate partners is a crime, then you need to do something about it. The challenge is, though, early intervention. The challenge is intervening at that misdemeanor level before we have broken bones and dead bodies. If we can intervene early enough in the process, we may have the chance, 1, to save the relationship, and 2, to prevent the violence from escalating later in the family.
Last week, Trina's boyfriend was back in court. In a statement, he told police of a previous occasion when he broke Trina's nose. Yup, I sure did, and I got away with it. And I'll get away with this one too, because she loves me and won't press charges. But this time, thanks to victimless prosecution, he's serving 6 months in jail.